Hello and welcome to part 6 of the Geek's Guide to the Workspace. Today we are going to be talking about managing my WinRaspAppRoid. It's a new device that we're bringing out, so just so everybody knows, it's massive. My name's Frank Serp, and I am a senior technical marketing engineer / architect. I've been on the sales side, I've been on the technical marketing side, I have a background in learning and development, and I even have a bachelor's in elementary education. So, not sure where that falls into this, but that's something unique about me. And I am here presenting with...
Hey guys, I'm Mike Dombrowski. I am one of our CEM domain specialists. I am on the sales side for our endpoint management solution. Been with Citrix 6 years, and similar to Frank, I have a degree that is not related to any of this as well. So happy to be here.
All right, so as we move forward, as I said, this is a 10-part series. We are part 6. So previously on the Geek's Guide, which ties very nicely into this session, we talked about the endpoint management side of the house, but more importantly, the application and the data. So we talked about keeping your hands off my BYOD. So today, what we're going to talk about is a little bit more around the actual device side management. Because we realize that, we can do everything we can to control the data, but there will be data on the devices. And there are certain things you just can't do if you're not utilizing MDM in your endpoint management plans. So one of these is going to be the dynamic endpoint optimizations, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, with a little bit of an overview of how does device management fit into the workspace, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to what does endpoint management and how does it fit into the workspace. Number one, it enables your IT to enhance the security without affecting user experience. Well, how does MDM not affect user experience? It all depends on how you deploy it. So you can be user-friendly and still have a device under enrollment, but you could also be very security conscious and have end-user capabilities suffer. So it's about that balance of those two. BYO, it allows for freedom, but it also leaves you partially exposed. So we want to make sure we're, handling that information. Citrix Endpoint Management secures your corporate data, and it mobilizes your workforce for productivity. It allows us to use shared devices and applications, and most importantly, it should be your single point for managing all your workspace-enabled endpoints. Because if it's a physical endpoint or virtual, endpoint management has the capabilities to manage that device. So, mobile devices at the workplace, they're here to stay. Businesses have developed a plan to manage them before, but depending on the path you go, there's a lot of times where either security gets their way or the end users get their way. And we've come to the realization now, as we become more mature, since, almost 10, 11 years ago when the iPhone disrupted the whole endpoint management situation, that we have to kind of come to the middle and let security have their wins, but also let the end users have their wins. So for both company and personal devices, there is a happy medium. An MDM and a BYO strategy can meet in the middle and have a very, very beautiful child with endpoint management. So we're going to talk a little bit about some advantages today, and I'm going to pass this over to Mike, and he is going to discuss those.
Thanks, Frank. So looking at Citrix Endpoint Management and some of the advantages, I know you guys have probably seen us talk about single sign-on at the keynote and other sessions, but I'm sure that either in your corporate or personal life, you have a number of applications that have a number of different passwords. If you're like me, you reset at least one per month. So the benefit of using Citrix Endpoint Management in conjunction with your workspace apps is that you have the ability to leverage a true single sign-on experience. What this means for an end user is fewer clicks, less windows, no more switching between apps to get a code or to go find a reset password link. You give your users the ability to log into all of their applications when on a managed device using the Citrix single sign-on applications and the integrations that we're working on through Workspace. So if you haven't seen the sessions around these, parts 2 and 3 of this Geeks Guide series, Synergy 131 and 132 respectively, cover this a lot around both single sign-on and integrations into other SaaS applications. Highly recommend that you check out the content that's going to be posted on My Synergy.
Hey, guess what? We have some breaking news. Straight out of the newsroom, it was announced during the keynote that conditional access, which does require MDM enrollment because we're getting device-based analytics and user-based analytics, will be coming to iOS and Android. So Microsoft has opened up those APIs. They're not tying my hands behind my back and only allowing that for Windows 10. We do have the ability to report the compliance to Microsoft Azure AD, and what does that do for some of you? Most importantly, it gives you the ability to add conditional access to your Office 365 suite of applications. So right now, if a user wants to log in on a device, they can log into any device, log into Office 365 if you don't have some additional controls in place, and have access to that information even if the device isn't managed or corrupted in some form or fashion. This is going to allow us to use a lot of the things that we saw in that last session where we were running PowerShell scripts to get information on services for Windows 10 devices. We'll be able to get jailbroken and root detection on iOS and Android, but now we'll be able to go ahead, block the access at the sign-in for that, so we don't have to put anything in the middle to try to intercept that traffic. We can let the normal user experience happen, and then if their device is not compliant, when they log in to the Microsoft login page, they will actually see that their device is out of compliance, and then they'll be able to reach out to you guys or your support teams to find out some information. So this is really big for Microsoft to open that up, but it's even bigger for us because it makes that entire story about securing the data in the workspace that much more impressive.
So with all of that, we've been talking a lot about endpoint management, and even Frank just a moment ago, and I'm sure in other sessions, other conferences, other contexts of endpoint management, you hear it called MDM, which is really mobile device management. How many of you guys exclusively work from a mobile device or a smartphone? Probably, oh, we have 2. I'm impressed. But what about all of the other devices? Your average user has between 2 and 3 devices. So with Citrix Endpoint Management, you get a unified console that you can manage a PC, a MacBook, a Chromebook, Citrix-enabled Raspberry Pis, or even IoT devices. So no longer are you only restricted to those mobile devices and managing those, but you get to take that management and place it beyond just the mobile atmosphere. Mobile devices are here to stay, sure, but we still work from other devices as well. So with that, you get the ability to restrict and push updates out, and Frank will be demoing this here in just a moment, to things like Win 10 devices or Chrome OS devices. You can also look through and make sure that your devices that your users are using are within compliance for your corporate standards. In addition to that, we have the ability to lock and wipe devices based on security actions that you've configured. If a user's disabled, if a device leaves a geofence or a perimeter that you guys don't want them to be using it in, we can lock the user out of those devices, and that goes for more than just a mobile device. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Frank, and we're going to run through a quick demo for you guys.
All right, so hey Mike, quick question for you. Do you know what happened while we were here at Synergy this week?
I do not know, Frank. What happened?
You do not know. Does anybody out there know what happened this week while we were at Synergy? Yes. Yes, Windows released their spring release 1903. And if you have a number of Windows 10 machines out there, they're being prompted to install that. And if you're not utilizing endpoint management or some other form of management tool, users may have installed that update without you testing it to see how it affects some of your line of business applications or other applications. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually look at a quick video, and we're going to talk about how endpoint management can manage that individual update. So we're here, we're going to click on our Control OS policy, we're going to edit it, we're going to actually go into the Windows desktop and tablet section, we're going to scroll all the way down, and we've set up some parameters already, and we're going to see the 1903 update. We are not ready to approve that yet because we haven't tested it. But we are going to approve a update that we've already tested. We're going to apply that. We've marked it as approved. We're going to save it. We're going to push that out to our employees. We're going to flip over to an individual device. We're going to check this device to see if that update is available to be applied, and we're going to see it's available to install pending a reboot. So as we flip over to our end user device, now the end user device, traditionally this would happen, during the window for the update to take place, but we're forcing it. It sees that the update's available, it's going to download it. I've sped this up, so it doesn't really happen this fast. But it's going to apply it, it's going to check if there's any additional updates. Since that update was applied, there isn't, so we're going to come back to our Windows 10 machine. We're going to show more, and we're going to actually be able to see in this console that was actually applied and now installed. So now we have the ability to not only see what can be installed, what options are available depending on OS, we also have the ability to see if those were installed or if they failed for one reason or not. So this is the modern way of handling those patches and OS updates on the Windows 10 device. Now on iOS, Android, Chrome, we can either force updates to happen or we can actually hold updates back for a set period of time. So we're going to look at some enrollment choices because enrollments do fall within the device management section. Mike?
Thanks, Frank. So let's talk a little bit about enrollment. It's never fun, but it can be easy. So there are a number of programs out there for the different devices that you may use or that you may distribute amongst your organization to help make this easier for both the admins and the end user. So if you're looking at Apple, I'm sure a few of you are part of the device enrollment program or volume purchase program, which are now called Apple Business Manager, Apple for Education. There's also Android Enterprise, which supports a number of enrollment methods, and we're going to talk through these programs a little bit more in the future. But things like for existing devices, going through with an EMM token, using a QR code, or also talking about going through with an NFC bump device as an admin. Or for net new devices, you can do zero touch out of the box enrollment for your end users so that when they have their device, they open it up and it's ready to go. So in addition to that, while I've been talking here, I've been going through a demonstration of using our auto discovery service. So you no longer have to distribute that 60-page document with 17 different links to your end user for them to enroll. They can just go into the Secure Hub app on their device, put in their email address, and go through the enrollment process step by step, and it guides them right through. So,
hey Mike.
Yes, sir.
Real quick. So if you're already doing auto discovery, then what's with the other automated device enrollments? What does that do that auto discovery doesn't?
It's a great question, Frank. So that gives you the ability to have these devices out of the box, pre-enrolled with secure settings, and put them into things like supervised mode, which we'll talk about more when we're talking about Apple devices, or lock them down and do further app configurations on some of the mobile devices with either Android Enterprise or Apple Business Manager. So what we're talking about with these enrollment processes is not just helping your end user's experience, but it's also making your admin experience a lot better, because oftentimes when we focus on the end user, as Frank mentioned, we lose a lot of that security. But we also want to increase the security, keep that user experience positive, but also help the admin experience to keep things moving along with your business. So
Mike did a great job of explaining a lot of the types of automated enrollments that we have through the Android Enterprise and Zero Touch and Apple devices with Apple DEP. And some of the, those are things where you purchase the device, it gets placed into a console, that console recognizes that it's a corporately owned device, and now it's being pointed to your MDM. So upon power up, it knows where to go to do the enrollment. That's what Autopilot does. So the difference with Autopilot is you can take your existing devices that are out there today and put them into Autopilot. So if there ever needed to be a device reset when it comes back online, it can take advantage of the Autopilot and have a fully managed, in a modern way, enrollment experience. And that's what we're going to see here. So as we go ahead, the user gets the device, you shipped it out to them, they power it on, and we're going to get the traditional, hey, I'm Cortana. If you want to mute me, click on the mute button. I already did that. From there, it's going to do the, this is something that users have seen before. They're used to this if they have a personal machine. Yes, yes. Skip, now it's going to talk and get some important information and some updates. It's going to connect to our network. Let's see what's new. And one of the things that's going to be new here is that it's going to ask me to enroll into my workspace. So now I type in my username, and these are my company credentials, because I'm doing a synchronization to Azure AD, enter in my password, and now I begin that enrollment process. That enrollment process says, here's my terms and conditions, let me accept those. If I do not accept those, it dies right on the vine. I accepted the terms and conditions, now it's going to get my environment ready for me based off of the organization's policies that have been pushed out. Now it is going to utilize Windows Hello, and it's going to ask me to set up a PIN. Prior to setting up the PIN, it's going to say, hey, we need to verify who you are. In this case, it has the multi-factor. I approved it on my mobile device. I enter in my PIN. Now it's all set. I hit OK, and I see my device. Now, after a reboot, you'll notice that my background has changed, and I log into the device. I have my Citrix files here. I have my Workspace Hub, a Workspace app. When I click on that, one of the things you're going to notice is it's going to launch in the upper right-hand corner. It's protected by Windows Information Protection. I can log into this. It was already pre-configured with an ADMX policy, so the user didn't have to put anything in but their credentials. And now I'm going to log into my workspace. And as you've seen in others, I'm going to have access to my desktops, my apps, and my files, the same files, apps, and desktops that I have available in all my devices. Now, I don't want my employee to play solitaire, so I went ahead and blocked that. And I also locked down the store to Microsoft Store for Business. In this case, I search for Facebook, and in that case, it is no longer available. And then as you can see here, I have specific applications and I've customized my start menu. One thing I did was push Citrix files, and here I have the Citrix files pre-configured with an ADMX policy, and I see that those same files that I had in my personal folder are available here in my Explorer. So now I can go ahead and I can right click and do a check in, check out. I can do a synchronize for offline access, but most importantly, these are the same files that I'm seeing in the application available locally on my device. And I got to name the file folder and give it a drive letter. So that was all pre-configured for the user, so there was nothing the user had to do but reboot their machine. What do you guys think? Good? Anybody here using Autopilot today? Does this match your experience? Good. Just want to make sure it's real. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to some additional platforms we're going to talk about. And when we talk about the platforms, we're going to look at why in those individual platforms should we have management happening. Mike?
Unfortunately, we did not have a WinRaspAppRoid to test today, so we're just going to dive into each of those individually. But once we do have that, we'll be sure to share that with you guys. So we're going to start off with Android. So I'm sure a few of you guys may be enrolled with the Android Enterprise program, or some still on the device admin APIs. So a few reasons why you should switch to Android Enterprise. Well, Google said so, and I'm sure that you guys have either have kids and have used that, or I'm pretty sure everyone in this room was a child, and because I said so was a good enough answer when you were younger. But in reality, Google has said that they are going to start depreciating the device admin APIs. So what that means is, for existing devices, Citrix is still going to support through the migration to Android Q. We're still going to, in the coming months, support the device admin APIs, but for net new devices, we highly recommend that you start using Android Enterprise for the uniformity of the solution. So some of the benefits of using Android Enterprise is exactly that, the uniformity. So all of the devices are going to have the same exposed APIs for you to leverage when using endpoint management solutions. It gives you the ability, if you were in for part 5 just a moment ago around the mobile app management, they went through a lot of the work profile. It gives you the separation of work and personal life. Our lives are on our mobile devices, and if you're anything like me, you don't want work wiping off all of your personal photos or anything that you have stored on your device. So what this gives you the ability to do is create a separate profile that's managed on those devices, or you could enroll for single use if you need something like a kiosk mode. This also gives you a lot more configuration possibilities and locks down the applications that you're deploying out to your users through custom app config policies within Android Enterprise. In addition to that, you have the ability to silently push out the apps and restrict what apps a user can provide through things like the managed Google Play Store, which leverages Google Play Protect to keep your devices and applications safe from vulnerabilities. So when we look at the different provisioning methods, I know we talked about enrollment just a little while ago, but there are different ways to go through an enrollment for a device into managed mode with Android Enterprise. So for existing devices, the first 3 here would require a factory reset, and you can use an EMM token. Ours is AFW #ZenMobile, and that will bring you through an initial setup into corporate-owned mode of that device. It will begin in a managed mode. You don't necessarily need a personal Google account to access. In addition to that, you can push out a QR code for your users to go through that setup, or set up a device for NFC bump. The last one, again, for net new devices I mentioned a moment ago, we recommend going through the Android Enterprise program, because you can use zero touch and use that automation that we talked about to have those devices enrolled and know where to go straight out of the box when your user does first launch. Back to you, Frank.
All right, so modern management. We kind of talked a little bit about this modern management thing. And what we see is we have the traditional management, and then we see hybrid in the middle, and we have modern management through the cloud services. So this is where Azure Active Directory, Information Protection, CEM, Office 365, Windows Store for Business live. We realize that you're not going to pick everything up and dump it into endpoint management tomorrow. That there's going to be a time where we're going to live in this middle section. However, as we begin that migration to the Windows 10 devices, Microsoft is making a lot of those legacy pieces available in modern management through a Citrix endpoint management. And what does that look like? They're taking a lot of those old group policies and Active Directory configurations and making them available as CSPs. Some of those CSPs are built natively into the endpoint management. Some of them are available on Microsoft's website and can be imported into endpoint management via an XML policy. And we saw some of that in the last session. And that gives us the ability to now move from the traditional GPO policies to the new modern. And as we saw in the Windows autopilot, that machine was shipped right to the end user. It was never connected to the domain. It's connected to your organization via Azure AD, which is tied to your domain, but the physical machine is not physically tied to your domain. So we have to begin that move from traditional to modern, especially if we're starting to ship out brand new Windows 10 devices that may never touch our domain. So why? Well, because you care about identity. There's a lot of devices out there. You know, I mean, Windows 10 is not the Apple of the world. So it's not like Apple made the hardware, the software, and you only can get it from one place. There's different hardware out there. Customers have choice. And if you are opening up the choice to the end users, they're going to be bringing in different types of devices, and modern management will cover those different types of devices. There are enterprise built-in security capabilities that we want to consider as well, and most importantly, it makes the deployment and management within a hybrid environment a little bit easier for you, because you can move those GPOs over to the endpoint management via replication today, and in the future, we'll see what happens. How about some Apple and
Sure thing. So I know what all of you guys are thinking. How can we talk about MDM without talking about the superior devices, right? So we have to discuss Apple in this conversation. I know I probably lost some fans in here, so enjoy. But when we look at using device management with Apple solutions, there's a lot of different pieces that go into that. And if you're using things like Apple Business Manager to deploy your devices, you can put those into a supervised state, which restricts what the user has the ability to do, what networks they're able to connect to, and it also allows you to push out custom app configuration policies through our endpoint management system to lock down EMM solutions that are out there in the public app store using those publicly exposed APIs. Not only that, but when we talk about Apple devices, they're all built on the same operating system. So you again have that uniformity, the same thing that we talked about with Android Enterprise. So you get that uniform customization going across the board for all of these devices. And it allows you to publish out applications to those devices through the volume purchase program using the public app store to deliver those silently to your end users. And similarly to what we do with the MDM side, you can also leverage the app management side on Apple devices. And again, highly recommend you guys check out part 5 of the Geeks Guide series that did focus on app management. So outside of all of those, you get the ability to leverage the tools that Apple provides to really hone in on a specific use for your devices. So similarly to how you can do kiosk modes and others, you can use this to customize a single-use device for an Apple iPad or iOS device in that case as well. And that's not just for the iOS side of things. We can also publish out policies to macOS devices in addition to the mobile side.
Hey, Mike, real quick, before you move on.
Sure.
ABM and AFE?
So ABM is Apple Business Manager. So we touched on that just a little while ago. It's now the combination of the Device Enrollment Program, or DEP, and Volume Purchase Program, or VPP. And Apple for Education is your AFE, which is the education version of Apple Business Manager.
I see, because you know we love acronyms, so if we didn't throw some in there, it wouldn't be Citrix.
So these next two parts that we're going to cover here, Frank, are probably my favorite part, because with Chrome and what you're going to cover shortly after that, you have the ability to distribute out low-cost endpoints with a robust user experience. So one of the benefits of using the endpoint management service that Citrix provides is, again, it reaches out to all of these different operating systems that you are using today. What a Chromebook does is it gives you a low-cost endpoint that you can push out, and you can integrate with Citrix Workspace to push your users into that secure digital perimeter, leaving zero data residue on the actual device. Similar to what we showed with the Windows update, you can push out or hold back OS updates to the Chrome OS devices as well. And then you can also add restrictions policies and enroll those devices through the endpoint management console out of the box using the Google solutions. So, and then I'm going to pass it over to you, Frank, here for our last piece around the Raspberry Pis.
Okay, but before we get there, we're going to actually see how some of this happens on a Chrome machine. So before I dive into this demo, I saw some people kind of shake their head when we mentioned Chrome. I saw some people, pick out their phones and start taking some pictures. The presentations will be available. You'll be able to watch this again because, you're on the edge of your seats because it's so exciting. But you'll be able to also get this information so you don't have to take pictures. I appreciate you taking pictures because I know you're engaged. But most importantly, when I was in the field, not too long ago, but long enough, I had a customer who was using Chromebooks. And I asked, why are you using Chromebooks? And they're like, well, they're for our executives. And that got me thinking, why are your executives using Chromebooks? And they said, well, they travel out of the country often, and some of the countries that they travel to, when they come home, they just say, we're taking that. I said, they're taking that? And they're like, yeah, they just physically say, thank you for visiting, but you're going to leave us a parting gift, and that's your computer. And we wanted to give them something that was secure, low cost, but also didn't leave any of our proprietary information on that machine for that foreign entity to utilize. Because it costs a lot of, it costs hours and some time to hack. And companies are getting companies are getting better at securing their organization from malicious entities. It's a lot easier if you just take the machine and then you can hack it right from the back room at the airport. So we're going to take a look at how we can have this information come out and, most importantly, keep that data secure. So in this case, we're going to start off, we're going to go into our Chrome OS policy, we're going to install an application, we're going to make sure that it's allowed, we're going to push the Citrix Workspace application down to our Chrome device. This way we don't have to have the user go find it and install it, and then we're going to also pin it on the machine as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say that this is allowed, we're going to name it, we're going to get the app ID, and we're going to say that it's allowed, install, and we're going to pin that. And then we're going to set some restrictions. We're going to block images. We're going to disable deleting the browser history. We're going to disable printing. We're going to disable the task manager to end processes. These are not necessarily the best examples that you're going to, you may want to allow deleting the history so that the end user deletes the history before they leave the country, so that there's really nothing left on the device. But these are easy to show in a demo, so that's why they're turned on. And then we're going to go in and we're going to see some device policies. We're going to disable guest user mode, and we're also going to set the time zone. So here we are with our Chromebook, and we're going to start our demo here. We're going to launch our workspace. As we can see, it's pinned to our taskbar, and then that's going to automatically launch. And when that launches, it's going to give me access to log in, and you're going to see I have access to the same apps, desktops, and files inside here. So I can go ahead and launch those, use them, and then close that out. I can go ahead and launch Chrome here, and I'm going to go to Citrix Tech Zone. We have stickers, plenty of stickers. Grab them while you can. And then I'm going to go to our tech briefs, and I'm going to look at our access control, and you're going to notice something strange here. I blocked images in the browser. So if I go ahead and I start scrolling through, you'll see that these images do not show up because I have a policy that's restricting images inside the browser. So I've restricted my images. Now if you go ahead and you click on that, I'm going to see my history. I can actually go into my history, and we're going to see that the clear browsing data, that actual clear browsing history, is deleted. So now I no longer have the ability to do that. So I can go ahead and cancel this out. I can go ahead and click on my browser. I can go over to my print, and that's grayed out as well. So now I no longer have the print capabilities. If you look at the bottom, I am set to Pacific time because it is not 9:15. It is a different time. It is at a different time. I'm going to go ahead and sign out of this machine. And then as I sign out on this machine, I no longer have guest mode. So if this machine was to be captured, taken, commandeered, I can, one, they need to know my password. If they hack my password, if they launch the Citrix Workspace app and all the right timeouts are set, it'll ask me to put in my username, password, and they would need to know my company credentials to get into that. And then that could also include multi-factor, one-time pins, whatever you want to use to secure that. So that's our Chrome management. So let's look at the Workspace Hub. Who here has a Workspace Hub in their place of business? Workspace Hubs, tiny, tiny little things. There's multiple different styles and types. They do support dual monitors, but they do a number of different things. And there's only a few ways to manage these. One is Citrix Endpoint Management. The other is a separate management console through Stratodesk. Now, I will be the first to admit, Stratodesk's console has lots of bells and whistles, lots of options. But most importantly, Citrix Endpoint Management, I think, has the couple of options that most of us need, like controlling the OS, pushing out a configuration file, setting the Wi-Fi capabilities, credentials, so the basic things that we need. So as we go ahead and we look at the Workspace Hub, it's cost effective. This could be a Workspace Hub that I could have in a conference room. It could be a thin client that I have somewhere in my office. There's a number of different things I can do with this. I can do Citrix casting, so I can walk into a conference room, scan the QR code, and send a session up to the conference room. I can also roam a session to the Workspace Hub if I don't want to cast something in particular. I would ask you to stop by the Innovation Center inside the Solutions Expo, because they're doing some really cool things with Workspace Hubs and hot desks. If you haven't seen it, somebody can come over. They have a Workspace Hub. You scan that QR code. You say it knows who you are. You set your profile, and the desk lowers. The light changes. Little digital picture frame has my vacation photos there. So now you don't have to assign a workspace to individual users. You can have generic workspaces. Somebody comes up, clicks, scans, and starts their day. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But most importantly, they go ahead and they are optimized for HDX, but they are much more robust than you would think in this little box. So let's go ahead and take a look at our Workspace Hub. So what we're going to see here, we're going to see how to enroll this. It's very simple. I'm going to go to my enrolled devices. I'm going to click on device whitelist, and I'm going to click on add. When I add the device, I'm going to select the device platform, which is a Workspace Hub. I'm going to pick the MAC address, assign the MAC address. This is the LAN MAC address, not your wireless MAC address. Just so if you have these, you want to make sure you dictate that, because when it talks to the auto enrollment service, it's going to be looking at that MAC address. I'm going to assign it a user. In this case, this is going into conference room, and this is in the US. And I'm picking a local user, and I'm assigning that user. That's how I deployed the specific configuration files. And that's what you see here. I had a gold image. I uploaded that gold image to a server. Now I post that URL, save it. When the device first connects, it's going to say, hey, this MAC address belongs to this endpoint management system. And then it's going to recognize that, reboot. It's going to be enrolled with a conference_US. And then it's going to say, here's my configuration file. You'll see the screen will blink a couple of times, and it will be configured. Now, what does that look like for our end user? We see a configured Workspace Hub. So now I pushed the background, I named it, I have my QR code so a user can come in and physically see what the conference room would look like. I could come in, scan my QR code, and join this conference room and cast a session. Now, if we go ahead and we look through this, that's not really the only thing you can do. You can do a couple of different things, and as we can see, I'm bringing my mouse down and I'm just pointing out the conference room and the QR code. I'm going to actually come over, and you can't really see it, but there's a little hamburger over here in the bottom left-hand corner, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to actually exit the Workspace Hub portion of the Raspberry Pi. So as I exit out here, you'll see I have my little start menu, but I'll also have some icons that are on the desktop. Those icons are the Workspace Hub, which takes me into where the QR code is, but I could also choose to have other options like Firefox. I didn't want Firefox on the desktop, but if I needed to have Firefox and somebody needed to just access a browser and not necessarily a full session, they could go ahead and do that. When I click on the Workspace app, what I've done here is it's going to actually take me to the login. When I click on the login, it's going to ask me for my server information. I type in my server information, and then it's going to prompt me for my user credentials. Now, this user credentials are going to be my traditional domain credentials. I'm going to enter those in, put in the information, and log on. And then I'm going to see what we've seen a number of times already. I'm going to access my workspace with my apps, my desktops, and my files. So this is something you can put into a guest station, and they can log in, even if they may not be utilizing your environment. Now, in this case, I need to go ahead and do a wipe. I go ahead and push the wipe. We're going to see that this screen is going to go black, no longer under configuration. It's going to reload, and because of that MAC address, when it comes back up, we're going to see what the default state is, and it's going to begin the enrollment process again. So that is a Workspace Hub. That's some of the power behind it and some of the exciting things that we can do. So as we look into the next session of the Geeks Guide, we're going to see that we're going to talk a little bit more about virtual apps and desktops as a service as well. So, Tech Zone, that's where you can find some great things. There's actually a video on the Chrome management. There's also a number of different tech insight videos and tech briefs. We have stickers. I have stickers up here. They're just on the stage. Come up and grab some. We also have some things before you leave.
So before you guys leave, a few things that I've learned from both Geek and Hitchhiker's Guide. Always know where your towel is. Don't panic, and be sure to rate the session. We've got a few other session recommendations up here. All of this content will be available June 3rd, and you can watch these sessions on demand through your My Synergy account shortly after they're completed. So with that, please remember to rate our sessions and be sure to play the Synergy game and game on.
Thank you very much. Any questions? If you do, feel free to come up to a mic because this is being recorded. If not, and you want to come up after the session, feel free and do so. We'll be here for a few minutes, but we do appreciate you guys spending some time. One last thing before you do leave. This 10-part series was the brainchild of one man, and that was Mr. Dan Feller. So if you see him, make sure you set to let him know what you think of this series, because it's something that we want to, bring value to you guys with, but most importantly, we want to make sure that it gets better over time. So thank you guys, and have a wonderful afternoon. I know we're getting to the lunch hour, so enjoy.
Thank you.